If you apply something topically to an area dense with that enzymatic activity, you can potentially leverage a higher disproportionate spike in that activity. So like in the studies, it said What's up guys, Derek, moreplaysmoredates.com. Today we're going to be talking about oral versus topical finasteride. So this is a highly requested topic. A lot of people want me to cover it, and I've had this on my to-do list for a while. I have a lot of shit on my to-do list, but it's an ever-expanding to-do list. So you have to understand, even if I said I'm going to be getting to it soon, even like 4 months ago, I have 500 plus topics on my to-do list that I feel like are good topic ideas. So sometimes stuff just goes on the back burner, and this is one of those things. But this is something I have a unique stance on that I think brings some new conversation to this topic. Because the first thing, the obvious thing everyone wants to know is it going to go systemic to the same degree as oral? Does it have any kind of therapeutic promise in a side effect aspect above and beyond oral? And frankly, off the bat, we can see that it still goes systemic and crushes DHT levels a significant amount. We know the molecular weight is about 372 Daltons, so it's really easy to get into the system and to get systemic. And when it goes systemic, it crushes DHT levels by a lot. And we see this even in reflections of dosages that are similar to the oral format. Like we see very similar outcomes on scalp and serum suppression of DHT, and this is what we're going to get into. But I have an opinion on it that doesn't, like, this isn't going to be a big video shitting on it and explaining why it's at best as good as oral, because there is clinical utility to this that I actually see as a unique strategy to deploy, and I'm going to explain it closer to the end. But if you want to see all the stuff on the scalp DHT and my interpretation of the studies, stick through this part. And we're going to go through one of them at a time and knock all these out. So the first thing to evaluate here is the study comparing the therapeutic effects of finasteride gel and tablet in treatment of androgenetic alopecia. So in this study, they basically had a group receive a topical gel of 1% finasteride and placebo tablets, while the oral finasteride group received finasteride tablets 1 milligram and gel base without drug as placebo for 6 months. The patients were followed by clinical observation and recording of side effects prior to the treatment and at the end of the first week, and then by a monthly follow-up. The size of the blah, 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 blah. Mean duration of hair loss was 18.8 plus minus 23.1 months. Each month, the terminal hair size, blah, blah, blah. The results of the study show that the therapeutic effects of both finasteride gel and finasteride tablet were relatively similar to each other. And if we look at the tables here, it shows kind of treatment, before therapy, after therapy. You can see the hair counts, terminal hair, size of alopecia in centimeters, response to treatment time, and the results revealed the moderate therapeutic response, but not a good response in both groups. Comparing finasteride gel 1% with finasteride tablet, 54.5% versus 56%, showed the relatively similar therapeutic response to both treatment options. Basically, the study found, like I already said the conclusion, but overall, comparing finasteride tablet and gel groups to one another, has found that in the second, third, and fourth months of patients being referred, therapeutic response to the tablet group was better than gel group, but in fifth and sixth months of treatment, therapeutic response in both groups was the same. In previous studies, finasteride tablet efficacy began after 3rd to 6 months of therapy, and if the patient had no response after 12 to 24 months, continuation of usage probably did not appear to be effective. In our study, there was no significant positive therapeutic response in both groups. Only one reason could be the duration of treatment was only 6 months. Thus, if the treatment was longer, the results could have indicated better therapeutic effect. Basically saying finasteride gel works. So that was the first study to note. One of the less notable ones, because we're not actually delving into scalp hormones here. But the next one, a novel finasteride 0.25% topical solution for androgenetic alopecia, pharmacokinetics and effects on plasma androgen levels in healthy male volunteers. So keep in mind, 0.25%, 2.5% is 25 milligrams per milliliter. So 0.25%, we're looking at 2.5 milligrams per milliliter here in this solution, which is a lot. So anyways, the study objective was to evaluate a newly developed finasteride 0.25% topical solution in comparison to the marketed finasteride 1 milligram tablet with respect to finasteride pharmacokinetics and suppressive effects on plasma DHT. So basically they had 24 healthy men with hair loss, male pattern baldness, blah, blah, blah. They received either multiple scalp applications of topical solution twice a day or oral doses of finasteride once per day for 7 days. Plasma finasteride, testosterone, DHT concentrations were determined. So after multiple doses, blah, 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 plasma DHT was reduced by roughly 68 to 75% with the topical solution and by roughly 62 to 72% with the tablet. No relevant changes occurred for plasma testosterone with either treatment. No clinically significant adverse events occurred. A strong and similar inhibition of plasma DHT was found after 1 week of treatment with topical and tablet finasteride formulations. All but finasteride plasma exposure was significantly lower with the topical than with the oral product. So one thing you have to take into consideration first off the bat is serum DHT levels take longer than 1 week after starting a low dose of a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor to reach homeostasis. So trying to get any sort of like target endpoint with reasonable accuracy with a oral versus a topical solution with a 1 week trial period is kind of ridiculous to begin with, in my opinion. Especially like even on the opposite side of the spectrum, when you look at the pharmacokinetics of finasteride and how long it takes for 5-alpha reductase activity to get inhibited and DHT levels to get crushed versus for finasteride to clear your system and 5-AR to basically get restored, we can see that in the finasteride group, it can take up to 6 weeks for finasteride induced DHT suppression to kind of like peak out. And then even once you discontinue it, it can still take, over a month to restore to baseline. Like this is not, just because the half-life is short, it doesn't mean like the drug is short half-life, but the actual enzyme itself, inhibiting this enzyme and essentially preventing it from working anymore, your body's enzymatic processes don't just flip back to baseline just because the drug is gone. You have to actually restore that activity. So that is not an overnight process and should be accounted for in this. I don't know why it isn't. So of note, after 1 day, a clear suppressive effect on plasma DHT was evident with the oral tablet at all post-dose assessment times, roughly 56 to 64% reduction, whereas reduction in plasma DHT caused by topical formulation was much less pronounced, 18 to 19%. On day 1, there was a significant difference between treatments and plasma DHT at all post-dose assessment times. But after multiple dose treatment, plasma DHT was reduced by 67 to 75% after administration of finasteride 0.25% topical solution twice a day, and by 61.8 to 72% after administration of the 1 milligram tablet once per day. So we're pretty much looking at the same thing after just a week. And this isn't even like letting 5-AR inhibition to really reach its peak of, like reflection in serum levels for DHT, at least based on the pharmacokinetics that I've seen laid out. Sometimes this is different. Like here, we've already achieved 70% inhibition. You're probably not going to get that much higher than that. So in this case, it seems like after a week, even the topical and the oral sort of even out. And at the end of it, they kind of go into this finding was confirmed by blah, 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 which reported that oral administration of 1 milligram and 5 milligram finasteride results in approximately equal changes in serum, prostatic, and scalp DHT. In a large clinical study, serum DHT was reduced by 50% after administration of finasteride at 0.05 milligrams per day and by roughly 70% after 0.2 to 5 milligrams per day for 42 days. Notably, finasteride Cmax and area under the curve following single administration of the 0.2 milligram oral tablet were 0.56 nanograms per milliliter and 2.19 nanograms per milliliter. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so a bunch of stuff you don't really care about, but the topical and the oral basically do the same thing in this as well. In conclusion, we found a strong and similar inhibition of plasma DHT after multiple doses of the topical and tablet formulations. As expected, finasteride systemic exposure was significantly lower with the topical than the oral product. Considering, even though we have the same suppression of serum DHT. Considering these findings, it would be interesting to investigate the effects of P3074 on DHT levels in plasma and scalp biopsies at different dose regimens. For example, multiple applications and lower volumes in order to further investigate. Yeah, so they're trying to like figure out if this is going to be something that can be incorporated with higher levels of tolerability over top of the, the regular oral. So that brings us to the last article here, which is the Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics Effects of a Novel Finasteride 0.25% topical solution on scalp and serum dihydrotestosterone in healthy men with androgenetic alopecia. So this is actually evaluating the thing that I just mentioned they wanted to evaluate, the effects on scalp and serum DHT on different doses of a novel topical solution of 0.25%. Finasteride, P-3074, and a type 2 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. So basically what they're doing is they're testing 18 men received 1 milliliter applied to the scalp. So that's 2.275 milligrams of the topical finasteride once a day or twice a day, or 1 milligram oral tablet once a day for 1 week. Study 2, 32 men received the topical solution at a dose of 0.2275 milligrams, 0.455 milligrams, 0.6285 milligrams, or 0.91 milligrams. And basically, I'm just gonna pick this shit apart for you guys. Scalp and serum DHT levels and serum system, like the results are just dumb in my opinion. Change from baseline scalp DHT was minus 70% for topical finasteride once per day, and approximately negative 50% for twice a day. And the tablet serum DHT levels decreased by 60 to 70%. So let me just go down to this chart here. Like here, their conclusion is the novel finasteride 0.25% solution applied once a day at the doses of blah, 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 results in, so like they're trying to figure out the optimal dose that's gonna have no, systemic reduction of DHT, but a high level of scalp reduction of DHT. But when you look at the table, serum DHT concentrations and changes from baseline after 1 week. So first of all, remember that 1 week is like probably not enough time to really reach homeostasis between both ways of application, like oral ingestion versus topical. But let's just accept it and go into it here and I'll show you. So tablet, 1 milligram per day. Topical solution, 1 milliliter of this stuff twice a day, or 1 milliliter once a day. So pre anything, their baseline, we have 0.4 nanograms per gram for tablet, 0.53 nanograms per gram for the 1 milliliter twice a day, 0.32 nanograms per gram twice a day, or once a day of the topical. Now, pre-dose, they go into the slashing of DHT. We have a minus 69.7% slash in DHT, minus 69.3% slash in DHT, minus 67.6% slash in DHT. 6 hours post-dose, minus 75.9% oral, minus 74% topical twice a day, minus 76.4 once a day for the topical. 12 hours post-dose. Oral, minus 76.1. Topical, minus 73.8 for twice a day. And then for once a day topical, minus 80.4. So going further into it, that is, keep in mind, that is serum DHT concentration. So we have pretty much equivalent around the board of serum DHT suppression here. And this is 1 week, last dose. So keep that in mind. Now, scalp DHT concentrations. I don't know how anyone could possibly interpret this table in the way that I'm going to elaborate to you here. So study 1, tablet, 1 milligram orally once per day. We have a 51.1% decrease in scalp DHT levels. Now, 1 milliliter twice a day, minus 47.2% DHT in the scalp. 1 milliliter once a day, minus 71.2%. So just objectively looking at this, you would think, oh, look, 71.2% decrease using the topical once per day. So obviously topical is more effective than oral because oral decreased it by only 51.1% for the same decrease in serum DHT. So, obviously topical is better because despite the fact that you get more scalp DHT relative to the fact that you still inhibit the same amount of serum DHT. But it's like, does it make any logical sense that applying the drug twice a day would result in the least suppression of scalp DHT? So look here, this is the same fucking solution. Twice a day, minus 47.2%. So the worst outcome was with the topical finasteride twice a day. Twice a day dosing. So doing double the amount that you're getting with 1 milliliter once a day. But somehow the once a day administration lost 71.2%. So the outcome of this that they say is in 1 week, after 1 week, the reduction in scalp DHT was more with the topical once per day than for the twice a day topical and for oral tablet, approximately 50% each. A marked decrease in serum DHT was found at all time points in all 3 treatment groups, in good agreement with the data from the previous study and with literature data, which reported 60 to 70% reduction in serum DHT following treatment with different finasteride oral dosages. Moreover, application of 1 milliliter of the topical finasteride once a day for 1 week resulted in more constant response in terms of scalp DHT inhibition than 1 milligram reference tablet administered once a day, taking into consideration the possible inter-subject variability derived from various factors such as the different grade of baldness in treated subjects, differences in density of sebaceous glands, hair follicles, and blood vessels, as well as differences in the blah, 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 blah. The difference in response between the once a day and twice a day dose regimens with respect to scalp DHT reduction is most likely to be ascribed to the nature of the topical formulation. So they basically go into how the topical solution works, how the thing permeates through the scalp and then, gets to where it's supposed to go. They then conclude we can deduce that the topical finasteride twice a day application does not improve the response and might somehow impair the release of the drug from the film. So does it make any logical sense that something you apply to your head that dries and then later that day you apply it a second time, that you're going to inhibit the first dose from getting there with the exact same thing that once a day would have penetrated better? Like, you're applying the same drug twice. If it works the first time to the extent that it works, why would doubling up the dose somehow impair it from working the first time? Like, I don't know. To me, it just seems like a big fucking stretch. But basically, they find that the entire outcome is based on this scalp DHT suppression of the once a day application being superior to all the other ones. So basically, they're trying to tell me P-3074, which is 2.275 milligrams of finasteride, 1 milliliter. They're trying to tell us that twice a day is worse than the oral tablet, and it's worse than once a day of the exact same topical solution. So the topical solution once a day works the best, but the same topical solution twice a day reduces your results by over 20%. Like, does that make any fucking sense whatsoever? Obviously not. So like, to me, I would just throw this out to begin with, but that's throwing out the results, but there is still stuff I think has therapeutic promise that I'm going to delve into now. Like, just because this is like a clinical endpoint, it doesn't mean this thing is useless. I just want to elaborate on why this study is kind of dumb, because a lot of people who read this, they focus on this minus 71% reduction in scalp DHT for the same suppression of serum DHT as the oral, and the oral reduces 20% less scalp DHT than the topical once a day, without acknowledging the fact that it makes no fucking sense that the topical twice a day would not work as well as either of them. Like, if the topical works at all, applying it twice a day is not going to make it work worse. Like, that's fucking ridiculous, at least in my opinion. But anyways, and then there was like, there's a second part of this study where they basically go into scalp serum and DHT levels for people using like higher doses of the topical versus other doses of the topical. And they basically find findings where they find weaker doses are more effective than stronger doses. And it's just like, it's just a weird fucking study. But anyways, those are the three that are, worth touching on. The thing that I want to elaborate on, and is the whole point of this, is the fact that I wouldn't, just because that study makes no sense, I don't discount it entirely. Like, at first I thought this is just stupid, just use the oral. The whole point of it is to try and get it into your system to try and inhibit 5-AR. So like, why are you making it harder for yourself? Just get it in there. But something I came across that I didn't really think of at the time, but actually correlates very strongly, is the fact that in the TRT space, a very common practice for guys who don't want to inject exogenous testosterone is to apply a cream. And where do they apply the cream? They apply it scrotally. And why is that? First of all, it's because it has significantly better blood flow and it absorbs far better in that spot. But on top of that, it's dense with 5-alpha reductase enzymes. So if you have a higher density of 5-AR enzymes, you actually get a localized effect that's significantly different than you would get if you applied it to a different tissue on the body. And this is something I had to see to believe. And when I dug into it further, I've had this on my to-do list for a while now, and it was super interesting to me. You see a disproportionate increase in DHT for the exact same dose of testosterone when you apply it to the scrotum versus if you apply it somewhere else. So let me show you what I mean by that. So basically, the way it works, you have 5-alpha reductase enzymes in your body. They're in different areas in denser amounts. You obviously know your scalp has a significant amount of them, or else we wouldn't use 5-alpha reductase inhibitors at all. Around your balls, you have a lot of 5-AR as well. So what's the outcome of that? That's why, DHT facilitates this, all the effects down there so potently. When you apply scrotally the testosterone cream versus to another area of the body, or versus exogenous injections of testosterone where let's just say you shoot a certain amount of test that makes you reach a certain level of testosterone in your serum. Reaching that same level in your serum with whatever amount of cream gets you to that testosterone level, you're typically going to end up with a higher DHT level for that same amount of whatever dose gets you to that test level. So there's a disproportionate spike. I'm going to show you what I mean in a sec here. So the first thing I want to show you is the pharmacokinetics of testosterone cream applied to scrotal skin. So scrotal skin is thin and has a high steroid permeability, but the pharmacokinetics of testosterone via the scrotal skin route has not been studied in detail. The aim of the study was to define the pharmacokinetics of testosterone delivered via the scrotal skin route. The study was a single center, 3-phase crossover pharmacokinetic study of 3 single doses, 12.5, 25, 50 milligrams of testosterone cream administered in random sequence on different days with at least 2 days between the doses to healthy eugonadal volunteers with endogenous testosterone suppression by administration of nandrolone ecanoate. Serum testosterone, DHT, and estradiol concentrations were measured by liquid chromatography with tandem mass spectrometry in extracts of serum taken before and for 16 hours after administration of each of the 3 doses of testosterone cream to the scrotal skin. Testosterone administration on the scrotal skin produced a swift peak, 1.9 to 2.8 hours, dose-dependent increase in serum testosterone with the 25 milligram dose maintaining physiologic levels for 16 hours. Serum DHT displayed a time but not dose-dependent increase in concentration, reaching a peak concentration of 1.2 nanograms per milliliter at 4.9 hours, which was delayed by 2 hours after peak serum testosterone. There were no significant changes in serum estradiol over time after testosterone administration. We conclude that testosterone administration to scrotal skin is well tolerated and produces dose-dependent peak serum testosterone concentration with a much lower dose relative to the non-scrotal transdermal route. So the most important part of this whole study and how I relate it to the topical finasteride is this part on page 5. Here it says, disproportionate increases in serum DHT after scrotal administration of testosterone have long been noted. Although previous studies measured DHT using immunoassays, shitty test, some unspecified, which are less accurate and specific than LCMS measurements, liquid chromatography with mass spectrometry used in this study. Disproportionate increases in serum DHT are reported after administration of all transdermal testosterone products with the higher DHT to testosterone ratio attributable to the strong expression of 5-alpha reductase in skin structures, which foster the conversion of testosterone to DHT during transdermal passage. Furthermore, androgens induce greater expression of the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, whereby administration of an androgen directly onto the skin creates a feed-forward positive feedback mechanism. Analogous disproportionate increases in serum DHT, creating a higher DHT to testosterone ratio, are also reported after oral testosterone undecanoate administration, blah, blah, blah. Then they go on to explain some other stuff, but basically they talk about how when you apply it to the skin, the fact that there's more 5-AR enzyme activity there, the actual outcome in hormone production is different, or hormone metabolism is different than if you injected testosterone. And I'm going to get into some actual blood work after to reflect this and then relate this back to finasteride. Now, another example of this is influences of percutaneous administration of estradiol and progesterone in human breast epithelial cell cycle in vivo. So this is a bit of a stretch, more of a stretch, because we're not talking about DHT here. I'm giving another example of the fact that in this study, a topical application of progesterone actually increases breast tissue concentrations of progesterone without increasing serum concentrations at all. So increased estradiol concentration increases the number of cycling epithelial cells. Increased progesterone concentration significantly decreases the number of cycling epithelial cells. So the goal of the study is to apply progesterone to the breast, essentially to kind of reduce the estradiol-induced proliferation of normal breast epithelial cells in vivo. And what they found is that it actually did do this. So exposure to progesterone for 10 to 13 days reduces estradiol-induced proliferation of blah, blah, blah. So this is another example of a topical solution being applied to a structure of the body that then gets a super physiological response in that target tissue that isn't evenly distributed in the serum like you would otherwise get with an injection or something like that, or an oral administration in some cases. Now, the odd thing about this though is the fact that, and it should be noted, like without discounting it, is the fact in the Scrotal application study, remember how it said at the end, analogous disproportionate increases in serum DHT are also reported after oral testosterone undecanoate. So again, I'm presenting both sides here that I'm sort of interpreting, but perhaps oral finasteride pretty much does the exact same thing as we're thinking of in these disproportionate terms. But regardless, I want to acknowledge the fact that we can see in studies that it's proven if you directly apply a drug to a tissue, you can selectively increase the concentration of that drug in that target tissue without necessarily affecting the systemic circulation to the same extent. Or you can get some sort of targeted action with something with a low enough molecular weight to actually permeate and get to that tissue and actually induce some localized activity with a relative lack of activity at other sites in the body perhaps. So this is something to acknowledge, because with finasteride, this is like the opposite scenario of what you see with the Scrotal application of the testosterone cream. So with testosterone cream, these guys are applying it to get a giant spike in libido and sense of well-being and blah, 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 by applying it to a zone dense in 5-alpha reductase. And it works. They get a disproportionate rise in DHT, which is proven clinically. And I'm also going to show you via blood work that this is proven clinically. And here's an example of one guy who is going to remain nameless for remaining anonymous. And you can see here he's on 4 clicks per day of 200 milligram per milliliter, 20% strength lipo cream. He does 2 clicks to his balls and 2 clicks to his thighs. Last cream application was 24 hours before his bloods. He has a 575.1 nanogram per deciliter total testosterone. He has a 22 picogram per milliliter free testosterone. This is actually nanograms per deciliter, but LabCorp has an error in their units of measurement, which I made a video on. This is actually nanograms per deciliter, but anyways. And then he has a DHT of 283 nanograms per deciliter with a reference range of 30 to 85. So typically when he injects testosterone, his DHT is in range. But on this Scrotal application of testosterone cream, despite having a very normal total T and a normal free on the high end of normal, his DHT is disproportionately high for applying it on a scrotum which is dense in 5-alpha reductase. We see this reflected in other people's blood work as well. For example, in this patient, he was on 120 milligrams of testosterone cypionate per week in 3 injections. And here, this isn't as profound as the last example, but it's still notable nonetheless. Even if they're not profound, I'm still reporting any kind of evidence I have to support or go against the argument. Either way, I'm going to show both sides. So here, his testosterone serum is 1,141 nanograms per deciliter. His free is 29. His estradiol is 49. His DHT is 62. Now, on Transcrotal 20% test, HRT based 2 clicks AM and PM, sort of a similar application style to what I just showed you. His total is 1209, so not that different. His free is a bit higher, it's 33. His DHT is 71.14 versus 62 in the last. It's not a disproportionate rise, but it's like for an extra, 70 nanograms per deciliter of test, getting another, 10%, 9% bump in DHT. You could argue, is that disproportionate or not? It's notable nonetheless. Now, a couple other examples. This guy, I don't have his actual blood work with me, but he did a shallow intramuscular shot of testosterone cypionate, 60 milligrams twice a week. Normally, his total test is 1332. His free test is 24.2, and his DHT is 121. When he switched to HRT-based cream, 3 clicks in AM and PM, 150 milligrams morning, 150 at night, Scrotal. I almost thought I said Scrotal. Scrotal application. Total test, 1,450. So not that much higher test. Free test, 28, not that much higher. But his DHT, over doubled, 255 nanograms per deciliter. Third patient, 20%. This guy was on cream and he switched to injection. So this is like a guy going from the high DHT method to the, normal injection method. 20% cream, 2 clicks twice a day, 2 times 100 milligrams. His total T, 2,108 nanograms. Free T, 99. DHT 302. When he switched to 250 milligrams of test E per week, his total T dropped by about 500. His free T dropped by a lot. It was about 64, 63.5. I don't know off the top of my head. It's late here. I can't do the math right now. DHT slashed in half. So So despite having a total T of a drop of only about 500, his DHT dropped by over 150. So, you know, you can take that with a grain of salt, but I think it's pretty clear that in some cases there is a disproportionate rise in DHT. This is proven clinically, and we also see it reflected in blood work quite often at this point. Now, so how does this all relate back to finasteride at the end of the day? So, like I said, if you apply something topically to an area dense with that enzymatic activity, you can potentially leverage a higher disproportionate spike in that activity. So like in the studies, it said there's a disproportionate increase in DHT when you apply to the skin because of the high density of 5-AR. So why would the opposite not apply with topical finasteride? If we use a 5-AR inhibitor on a tissue that is dense with 5-AR, why would we not see a disproportionate drop in the opposite direction of DHT relative to serum? So despite in the actual studies showing a huge drop in serum, what we see in the scalp may be analogous to what we see, well, on the opposite side of the spectrum, to what we see with the scrotal application of the test cream. So if you did an injection of test, but again, remember in the thing, it also said there's a sort of similar outcome with oral test undecanoate. So is this the same thing we're going to see with oral finasteride versus the topical? Is it pretty much just the same thing with the disproportionate decrease in DHT and it makes no difference at the end of the day? I don't really know. And like obviously no one's injecting finasteride, so maybe the oral is perfectly sufficient to achieve that same disproportionate decrease in DHT. I don't know, but all I know is in these studies, we're seeing tissue concentrations with topical applications of solutions with low enough molecular weight to permeate and get through there to the tissue with relative lack of systemic activity in other areas. That leads me to believe that there may be some sort of clinical efficacy to introducing topical finasteride or dutasteride, which I'm going to get into in other videos, and how the molecular weight may play in our favor and certain things that have to do with that, mesotherapy, stuff like that. But leveraging topical 5-AR inhibitors, maybe we can sort of replicate the opposite of what we see with the transcrotal testosterone cream administrations, but on the scalp. You know, we get that topical localized inhibition of scalp DHT, and obviously we see clinically that relative lack of activity in other tissues doesn't seem to be reflected, because we're seeing in the outcomes, we're seeing the exact same drops in serum DHT even after just a week. But that doesn't discount my stance on that it may be something that can be stacked on top of oral. I don't know, to be honest. Just because a number on a piece of paper says 70%, there's still a residual 30%. And maybe that residual 30% you can clean up a bit with topical as well. So am I going to discount the potential therapeutic promise of introducing both oral and topical at the same time? No, I'm not. Maybe I can crush a decent amount of my scalp DHT with the oral pill, and then maybe I can get that localized, you know, disproportionate decrease in DHT and clean up the rest of it with a topical 5-AR inhibitor. You never know. So that is sort of the whole conclusion on the whole thing. I don't think just because on a piece of paper they inhibit, you know, a similar amount, it doesn't mean it's the same overlapping amount. Like maybe it is, you know, it very well could be. But at the end of the day, the 5-AR inhibitor, if you're not using dutasteride, you're still missing a certain piece. And then you could obviously argue, well, why don't you just use dutasteride orally and just nuke the whole thing? Well, at that point, if you're like, it depends on how aggressive you're trying to go here, because at least with topical, you can sort of titrate your dose based on whatever you want to use. You can go as low as you want because the whole thing is diluted into a solution that you can then ideally compound into whatever you want and get some sort of like targeted decrease in DHT to whatever point you feel necessary. Not everyone's trying to achieve like castration status DHT levels. So, and in that case, it depends, man. It's kind of like the goalpost is shifting when you start to get into like nuking DHT territory. And that's where I think when you start to get into dutasteride territory, you start to look at things like, well, obviously the nuclear approach is just nuking it systemically and then cleaning up the spike, the subsequent spike in scalp testosterone, which is easier to deal with topical anti-androgens, topical selective androgen receptor modulators, anything of that nature. Or you start to get into mesotherapy and things like topical dutasteride with potentially an even lower systemic activity than finasteride just due to the molecular weight and having the proper vehicle to maintain that sort of localized activity. I don't really know. This is some of the stuff I'm digging into right now as well, that I'm going to be covering and eventually having some sort of conclusive outcome on when I come out with my, like finalized comprehensive overview of everything. I have literally anecdotes from people with scalp biopsies who've used, dutasteride mesotherapy, dutasteride liposomal. I have people who've used microneedling with normal topical dutasteride. I have a lot of anecdotes that I can reflect on that I've been taking notes on for the past year or two now. And I'm going to, pull them all out, and it's all going to be compiled into some professional organized format in the future, and all going to be presented on my channel as well as through some sort of organized course in the future that goes step by step rather than having like random videos here and there, just like, sprinkled into my channel. Because obviously I'm not going to put out a hair loss related video every single day for the next year. So eventually it's going to have to be compiled into some organized format. I'm going to have to film a lot more stuff to cover all the stuff A to Z, but it's going to happen. So that is where I'm at with the stuff. With the topical 5-AR inhibitors, I think they are very promising, and I think in certain applications they may be beneficial. I think for some people, you may even benefit from choosing topical finasteride over oral finasteride, even though they have similar outcomes on paper. In some applications, perhaps even using them together if you pretty much have no side effects from oral and you want to get an even better, potentially clean up more scalp DHT that you may have missed with the first, big chunk that you've taken out with the oral. I don't really know how it's going to have the overlap there. Or combining oral finasteride with a micro dose of a topical dutasteride, or a small dose of, there's different combos you can do here and different ways to make it work. But the molecular weights in particular, the vehicles, the application method, scalp porosity, endogenous hormone levels and AR density and expression, and just leveraging the disproportionate amount of 5-AR activity locally. There's a lot of things that are worth exploring that I feel like fucking mosquitoes are untapped, that we're going to be delving into and revealing a lot of interesting information that's going to be useful for us to leverage, not only for those who are trying to nuke hair loss that have like really aggressive loss, but also for those who are really prone to side effects and need to figure out like a more tolerable way to go about inhibiting 5-AR, specifically like where you need it done and kind of where to bridge the gap between systemic reduction and reaching clinical target endpoints with hair loss prevention. So long video, and some people are going to complain about the video, but people who want to learn this shit are going to appreciate the detail, I hope. So, well, I know they are. Some people are still going to complain, 40, 50-minute video? What the fuck? It's like, bruh, turn it on 2x speed. It's not that bad. If you want to learn, you're going to sit through it. Otherwise, you can go spend the hours of the fucking countless weeks of sitting down and literally like typing with people who I've met through the community that have done this and that, or doing these experiments on yourself and getting thousands of dollars of blood work done on yourself. Like, anyone who complains about the length of these videos but wants to learn this shit is just a privileged fucking baby, in my opinion. So anyways, that is what I'm saying. So take from that what you will. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you have any experiences with topical finasteride plus oral finasteride, topical dutasteride, oral dutasteride, mesotherapy, liposomal preparations? And by the way, the liposomal preparations I'm going to be delving into too, as far as, like normal vehicles versus liposomal vehicles versus injecting the shit right into your scalp. Different things in the pipeline that I'm going to be covering. But the fact that it's clinically proven, and I've seen myself through actual blood work of people that I trust too, that it indeed has a disproportionate activity at 5-AR through the skin with topical applications, presents a very interesting situation whereby it can be leveraged on the opposite side of the spectrum, not for, obviously HRT. If you're somebody who's looking to spike your DHT, that works obviously on the scrotal, on the scrotum, but on the scalp, the opposite definitely has some sort of, worth in exploring further, because this is obviously something that's being leveraged in the HRT space for the opposite reason right now, and it should be leveraged in the hair loss space for the exact same reason, in my opinion. So thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe if you appreciate these deep dives. The like and comment helps the algorithm, so it's much appreciated when you guys do that. If you are interested in topical finasteride, you can make it yourself. And it's pretty easy to do, to be honest. Honestly, I'm pretty sure there's guides on the internet that show you how to do it. You can do it pretty cheap. If you want to order it through a compounding pharmacy though, and actually get a prescription for it that you can travel with and have a legitimate like pharmacy grade stuff rather than ordering it from, I don't know, like I just, like sometimes you don't want to play chemist and do it yourself. And if you want to get it compounded with other medications that you may not have access to or may not know how to mix or know what vehicle to use or whatever, if you just want it done for you and to have a legal prescription to travel with, you can check out my HRT clinic. We have a hair loss section where you can get topical finasteride in a trichofoam vehicle. You can get it in a normal vehicle. You can get it compounded with latanoprost. The thing I'm exploring personally right now is the finasteride compounded with latanoprost topically, as well as I'm adding an extra strength latanoprost on top of that. And obviously there's different things you can do. This is a bare bones site right now with less options than we will have in the near future, but for now this is what's available, and you can check that out I'll put in the link in the video description below. You can check that out. We have a lot of stuff on here. Like I say, it's bare bones, but honestly there's a lot of good options on here that you'll probably be interested in. If this stuff is of any interest to you, if you've even made it this far in the video to begin with, there's probably a topical finasteride solution compounded with something else in here that you may want access to and may want to look at, like whether it is minoxidil compounded with tretinoin to enhance sulfotransferase enzyme activity to convert it to minoxidil sulfate, plus finasteride compounded into that. We have that stuff. We have the latanoprost compounded with finasteride. We have a lot of interesting options, and we will have more in the future. So check that out. If you are interested and want a prescription, all you have to do is add it to, you make an account, you add it to your wish list, and you basically make like a shopping cart of what you want to get prescribed. And then from there, you make a call with our patient care coordinators. They talk to you and go over your medical needs and whatnot. And from there, you get coordinated over telemedicine with our doctors, Skype, FaceTime, Zoom. It's all super convenient from the comfort of your own home. No inconvenient visits to your local doctor to explain why you need a hair loss medication for them to judge you and be fucking dickheads about it and give you nothing that you actually need and not even know what they're talking about. If you want to talk to people who actually will help facilitate your goals, then I recommend you make an account, add what you want to your wish list, and then somebody from the company will reach out to you and arrange this in the most easy way possible for you. So yeah, check that out if you're interested. This is where I'm getting all my pharmacy grade medications right now. Obviously, like why the fuck would I use somewhere else when I own equity in this company, by the way, if it's not obvious at this point. I've said it multiple times now, but I do. And anything else I'm associated with is in the video description below as well if you want to check that out. So thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.